So in this video, we'll be starting the theory chapter number 7, which is on the impact of the internet. Okay, so first we'll be downloading our presentation for the class. So you just come into your class and you can download the presentation from over here. Open a new window and click on download. So open it. Okay, so I have my presentation over here, and then also I would recommend at the same time if you could also open this particular worksheet questions based on textbook content. There are some questions over here. Let's download that as well. Okay, because at the end of each video we'll be answering some questions from this document. Okay, so we are over here. Let's download that. And let's open that as well. Okay, so starting onto this particular chapter, which is chapter number 7, impact of the internet. So let me click enable everything. Okay, so starting off our chapter. Okay, so the first slide goes on to say the internet is not the same thing as the World Wide Web. That's very important to understand. The triple W's, okay, so almost all websites that we know of begin with www dot whatever, okay. So when we talk about the World Wide Web, we are talking about a website that can be publicly accessible by anybody, okay. So any website that is a part of the World Wide Web is publicly accessible by anybody who has an internet connection. Now, there are certain websites that do not come under this World Wide Web. So those are websites which only certain users are allowed to use. Okay, only people with a username and password are allowed to use that website, for example. Okay, so for example, you might find a particular bank. It allows its customers to do online banking. But if you want to visit their online banking facility, they will say they give you an address, but that address will not have 3 W's in front, because that online banking facility is only available to customers of that particular bank. It's not available for everybody. Okay, so for example, if the bank's name is ABC Bank, it will be ABC. It will be, for example, abcbank.net. You will not get it as going as www.abcbank.net, for example. Is it clear? So anything that comes inside the World Wide Web is basically websites which can be publicly accessible. Anybody who has an internet connection can access those websites. Okay. So you need to understand the internet is not the same as World Wide Web. Okay, the World Wide Web is just a service that runs inside the internet. The internet is the bigger picture. Okay, so it goes on to say the internet is the interconnected network of computers that provide many online services to users. The World Wide Web is just a service that runs on the internet. The World Wide Web is a collection of publicly accessible web pages. Okay, moving on to the next thing. When it comes to the internet, there is something known as protocols. Okay, so when we say protocols, we are basically speaking about rules that have to be followed when data is being transmitted on the internet. Okay, so one protocol that we are learning is something which we call Internet Message Access Protocol. So when we speak about the IMAP protocol, this particular protocol will define how emails should be loaded. Is it clear? When it comes to loading emails and storing emails and all that, IMAP will define the rules that the email servers and your computer should be following when dealing with emails. Is it clear? So when it comes to, for example, of sending files, okay, you will be following something which we call file transfer protocol. So for example, let's say you're uploading a profile picture or you're downloading a movie from the internet. Okay, when it comes to transferring files on the internet, you will be following something which we call FTP, file transfer protocol. This particular protocol will define the rules of how you can send files in the internet. Then when it comes to secure remote logins, so for example, you're accessing a server computer from your computer. We call that a remote login. You are somewhere else accessing a computer which is somewhere else. So the rules for that are defined by secure shell. Then for example, you are making a call over the internet. We call it voice over internet protocol. This particular protocol will define the rules for calls that are made over the internet. So for example, Skype calls, WhatsApp calls, okay, they will be following the VoIP protocol. Then when it comes to instant messaging services, it will be following a protocol which is known as XMPP, Extensible Messaging Presence Protocol. Then when it comes to loading a website, we'll be following something known as HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And we do know if it is a very secure website, a website which is handling credit card details or something very, a website handling confidential information, we'll be using something which we call HTTPS, Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. And then for giving an address to a device that is connected to a network, it will be following something which we call Internet Protocol. Now none of us need to by heart the rules of these protocols. We just need to remember the names of these protocols. Okay, for an email we use IMAP, for sending files we use FTP. Just have 2 to 3 of these protocols in your, just have 2 to 3 of them by heart. Okay. Moving on to our next slide, we are talking about the impact of the internet on individuals. What has the internet done to individuals? The internet has changed how people live and work, giving them greater access to information and services. Okay, so if you go to this table that has been provided below, you can see those days this was what people were depending on, the television and radio. But today people are completely depending on the internet, and there is quite a difference between the television and radio and internet. Okay, so those days people were depending on this. Okay, if you talk to your parents, for example, this was their source of information. But in today's generation, the source of information is completely coming out of the internet. So there are some pros, there are some cons. You can find many pros in the internet. But if I was to ask you, tell me one pro of using the television, you can always point to this particular point and you can say it has always been held to enforceable standards. Okay, which means before information is published on the television or on the radio, the information is checked. Is it true? Is it accurate? Is it non-biased? Okay. So information coming from the television or radio is always held to enforceable standards. But when it comes to the internet, since everyone is free to say whatever they want, you can always find a lot of false information, you can find a lot of inaccurate information, you can always find a lot of biased information. Okay, so this is one of the pros or one of the advantages of using television or radio for getting information. Okay, but if you look at all the other points, they are all advantages of using the internet to gain information. Okay, it's available all the time, unlimited number of channels, the information is not edited, you can access it from anywhere with a connection, and certain content on the television might be geo restricted. It might be only available for Sri Lankans, might be only available for Indians. But when it comes to the internet, almost all information is available for all countries to view. Okay. Then moving on to the next slide, it goes on to say, as well as access to news, sport and weather information, users can also use the internet to access booking systems. You can study online. Okay, for example, what you are doing right now is using a VLE to prepare for your ICT exams. Okay, so ICT individuals can also add content to web pages. Okay, this has had an enormous impact on the way in which information is distributed around the world. Okay, so nowadays you get so many websites which allow users from around the world to add information to it. Okay, so this has definitely had a huge impact on how information from different parts of the world is put out. Okay, so there's a small activity over here. It's talking about memes and it's talking about a particular story behind Success Kid. Okay, so do go and do your research on this particular topic, Success Kid. On Wikipedia you can find some interesting information. Okay, this is actually a meme. Okay, this picture actually became a meme and it became so popular that so many good things happened. Just do your research on Wikipedia and see. Okay, moving on to the next part, it's us talking about impact of the internet on individuals when it comes to employment. So how has the internet affected the working crowd? Okay, so the first thing is skills requirement. Okay, so nowadays when companies hire an employee, companies hire an individual to work for them, there is one particular skill that they are all looking for. What is the skill? Employees should know how to use the internet for work. In today's world, almost everything is happening over the internet. Okay, so they are saying when they hire employees nowadays, one of the important skills that employees should be having is is the ability to use the internet for work. Okay, so they are given an example over here. They're talking about journalists used to write articles using a word processing software and submit them to the editor for publication. Okay, so those days journalists would go around, find an interesting story, type it in Microsoft Word, for example, and then give it to the editor for publishing. But nowadays, journalists are also often required to post and update their stories on social media, write blogs, and broadcast from their smartphone. Okay, so nowadays journalists can no longer just type an article and send it to the publisher. Nowadays, they have to have their own social media account, instantly keep sharing news of what's happening around the world, what's happening in the country. Okay, they have to be interactive with the audience. Okay, so this is just a simple example of how the internet has changed how journalists are functioning today. Okay, then something else that has happened is new job opportunities as the nature of jobs changes. Okay, as the internet changes the work that people do, this provides new job opportunities. Okay, so because of the internet, there are some new job opportunities that are coming up. So an example is given to you. It says a plumber is no longer limited to installing and repairing pipe work. Homeowners are now purchasing smart systems that can be controlled from digital devices using the internet. Okay, so nowadays you have household items which can be controlled using the internet. So for example, if you are purchasing pipes and if you are purchasing what you call geysers and items like that, a plumber should also know how to work with these smart items. Okay, if you're going to purchase a pipe which can be connected to the internet, if you're going to buy a geyser which can be connected to the internet, the plumber who's going to fix it, he too needs to know how to operate these devices, how to connect these devices to the internet. Okay, so this means that plumbers have opportunities to extend their skills to include these new technologies in their work. Another simple example we can give you is the job of trishaw drivers. Those days, trishaw drivers, or you can say taxi drivers, were waiting for hires to come to them. They were on the road waiting for people to come to their vehicle and then do an hire for them. But nowadays, on their mobile phones, customers can request for a taxi to come right to their doorstep. Okay, so you can say taxi drivers or tuk drivers are no longer going around in circles looking for hires. Instead, they get the hire on their mobile phone and they directly go to where the customer is waiting for them. Okay, so new job opportunities as the nature of how the way the job is done changes. Okay, then there is something else which is known as job loss. Okay, so this is something negative, a negative impact. If employees do not keep updating their skills in the use of the internet, they may not have the skills required to carry out new work. Okay, so if they do not keep, every day something new is coming out in IT. So if employees do not update themselves, if they do not try and use newer methods, okay, in doing their jobs, very soon they are going to, be out. Okay, because every day new skills are required to carry out your work. Okay, so if they are not willing or able to retrain, they could lose their jobs very easily. Then another impact that is there is collaborative working. So because of the internet, many employees can work together on the same project using their own computers. Okay, employees can be using their own computers and they can all work together on the same project. Okay, so it says collaborative working allows work to be split into a number of individual tasks, each of which can be done by a different employee. Or else collaborative working also allows more than one person to work on a task at the same time. Okay, then moving on to something else that it has brought out is the fact that you have flexible working hours. Flexible working hours means because of the internet, employees can stay back at home and do their work. They do not have to come to the office and do their work. Okay, so there are benefits. There are also drawbacks. If we go through the benefits, you can say employees can work at a time of a day that is right for them and take breaks whenever they need to. Okay, so certain employees, for example, they may say, I prefer working in the day. Some might say, I prefer working in the night. Some might say, I prefer working in afternoons. Okay, so if employees are working from home, they can easily work at whatever time is comfortable for them. So that's a benefit. Employees can work at a time that is comfortable for them. Next, employees can fit their work around their family life. Then if we just go through a few of the drawbacks, since employees are working from home, they will be not meeting each other face to face. Okay, so which can reduce their understanding of each other and their employer. Okay, so when employees are working from home, they rarely see each other, they rarely see each of the other employees, they rarely see their manager. So what you can say is that team building feeling may not be there so much in the company because each person is working from their own home. Then something else is employees may not manage their work effectively, which could affect their home life. So certain employees, they might be distracted by what's happening at home, or they might be in too much of a comfortable environment, so they may not feel like working. Okay, so obviously what happens is they are not going to be doing their office work properly, which could affect their home life as well. Okay. The flexibility provided by the internet also enables employees to work when they are traveling. Okay, so because of the internet, even while traveling, employees can complete their office work. Okay, it also allows employees who work on the move, such as repair engineers and salespeople, to access up-to-date data when on site or at a client's location. So certain people do not work at the office. They have to work at a particular site, or they have to work while on the go. Like for example, repair engineers, salespeople, they go from shop to shop or house to house trying to sell their products. Okay, so these people do not have an office, but thanks to digital devices and the internet, while they are on the move, they can still do their work. Okay. Then what we'll do now is open this particular paper, questions based on textbook content, and please do try and answer questions 1 to questions 8. I think you can answer from questions 1 to questions 8 because we have covered this part. In the next video, we'll be continuing from this particular slide number 9.